Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we're going over our experience with Daggerheart's Quickstart adventure. Welcome to True Strike.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the show.
Howdy.
Today we're talking Daggerheart starting adventure.
Yeah, the Quickstart adventure for Daggerheart is what we played on our first in-house actual play.
Yeah, so this is the first time that we played Daggerheart in earnest. So actually sitting down and functioning and going at it. And we were going to do our homebrew characters.
Yep.
Essentially, we were going to do like in a whole, homebrew setting for this. But then the quick start adventure was just kind of there and looking kind of cute. So
Kind of cute's one way to put it.
yeah.
It was interesting. As I was planning out, what they're going to do for level 1. And the idea here is we're going to do 10 games, levels 1 through 10. Every, end of every game, everyone's going to level up, etc. But reading through the quick start adventure, it caught my eye as being very handholdy. And I wanted to have first-hand experience, not only myself just reading through it, but I wanted to run it. I wanted Richard as an experienced, tabletop player, and then a couple of other players that are less experienced, and to get everyone's perception on this and what it was like with a very railroady, heavily scripted almost, adventure, but one that is designed to teach you how to play the game while running through that script. And I just wanted to pick your brain overall, Richard, as to how that felt. And you've got, a Tempe's opinion, and I've gotten Corey's opinion, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth going over that. So, hi. If you're wondering what we're talking about, we have up on the channel the audio version of that game. And if you want to go check that out and give it a listen, go ahead. Feel free. Thank you for checking it out. And if not, hey, feel free to stick around and you'll kind of hear our thoughts here anyway.
Yeah.
So overall, blanket statement. What did you feel about not how our game went?
Okay.
Take yourself out of that, the fun of playing with your friends and stuff, but just the quick start adventure in total.
So in total, I thought it was well put together.
Okay.
Like I would probably, if I was going to rate it on a 1 to 10, and this is I'm gonna have to give you some qualifiers on this.
Oh sure, absolutely.
Is that I would probably rate it at about an 8.5.
Interesting.
Yeah, which to me would sound high, because was it the best quick start adventure that I've ever played in? No, but I think that it really did set out what it meant to do, which was, like you said, very heavily scripted, kind of railroady-esque as far as teaching people how to play the game. It did at times feel maybe a little bit too handholdy, which normally I would have probably dinged it for, but I have to kind of check myself and realize who this is for.
Yeah.
Which you are the one that made me do that. Because the very first thing that you told me when we were going to do this was that we weren't going to be playing our characters, because you're like, we're playing Daggerheart, and I was like, awesome, Cornelius is ready to go, we're rivet bottom all day long. And then you're all like, well, what if you weren't?
Maybe not all day.
Maybe not at all. What if you weren't?
Yeah.
And then I asked you, I was like, well, what do you mean? And you were like, well, this quick start adventure, how did they say, like, you have to? How do they word that exactly?
Basically, one character has to play Marlowe. It's just a requirement for this quick start. And then when you're looking through it, it basically is like, yes, let your players choose from these characters.
Yeah.
And if you read their synopsis on the Daggerheart, blog, they're like, yeah, or you can punch in your own custom characters. You can. But then the heavily scripted element of calling out which part of character sheets to look at and what numbers and stuff they're, referencing, or the fact that Marlowe is specifically named in, the dialogue boxes multiple times throughout. You get away from that if you don't use the pre-generated characters.
Yeah.
So for the essence of giving this the full Daggerheart experience of just sticking to the quick start and what someone opening up this box and playing this game for the first time would experience, I really wanted you guys to just use, one of these 5 characters.
Yeah. And
which you did.
When you told me about that, my initial reaction was, ew. And I think I actually said, like, I don't like that at all. And when you said that, and like, I said, I'll do it. Like, obviously I'm going to play what you want to do and I'm going to play the game how you want to play it. But I don't like that. And I think it's a weird decision that I don't agree with, which was my gut reaction. Right. So that was my gut reaction. And then after playing it, and after I thought about it before we even played it, but even more so after playing it, now I understand why. And it's because the way this quick start is actually set up. Number one, as you said, there's name drops, right? So you're constantly referencing the name drops on here. The other thing is that at the bottom of each one of these character sheets, you'll notice there's a hunk missing out of this one, is a cutout, because they actually give you the standees that you can use for all these characters. So you actually have the little art standee. So playing these characters means that you have built-in quote unquote miniatures that you can put on the table to represent like the battlefield, which we ended up doing.
And they give the GM terrain, which is the same thing. They're little standees. There's trees and there's a cart and there's adversaries, and you just with your players, it even tells you, it's like, hey, have everyone within this range, like close range or far range, and just have them place minis with you to kind of just help build out the battlefield together.
Yeah.
And which we did.
Yes. Yeah. No.
And yeah, I think some of the players that, were new to this and maybe don't have an idea or grasp on far range versus close range versus melee range, having, the papers there, the standees there to track everybody in real time helped with that, envision that and calculate a little bit better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do think that like this setup, so this quick start in particular, would be very easy for a newbie to take in. Like if I think back to new people that we brought into our gaming group, their first experience playing any kind of TTRPG, if it was a setup like this, would have helped vastly to grasp the mechanics and everything like that, and really get the idea of how to really play a TTRPG. I do think it has a place for veterans too. This is not something. Yeah, I would actually say that this is not something that I would recommend skipping if you're going to try and get into Daggerheart. And the reason for that is that I think that this could definitely be something that a seasoned group could sit down and play through as their like first run through of Daggerheart, because it's not going to take you very long, right? I think a seasoned group could run through this very quickly and have it cover a lot of the basic questions and get a lot of the basic stuff out of the way to make the initial game that you're going to play, that's probably not going to include these characters, a lot more of a smooth and streamlined experience.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily saying that I'm even against this anymore, as in for seasoned people to play. I think it has its use in both scenarios, honestly.
Okay. I am of both minds in that if you were a veteran, I would actually go ahead and read through this as your GM, remove character names, right? Drop that entirely and have your characters make their own original characters, because this does end in a kind of cliffhanger that you can build off into more things. And in fact, they've released, the next part of this essentially. You can go from this and play into that, which, maybe we'll do with our own, made characters and stuff. Wink, wink. But, or maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll just make our own entire thing, because I have ideas for that already. Well, I just got to read through it and see how we're feeling. But one of my biggest things for this that hurt my opinion on it is some of the things it doesn't go over. Were you about to say them?
Well, no, I was going to say, if you're going to get really deep in here, before you do get too deep into the weeds, give me your 1 out of 10 as the game master of the quick start.
As is?
Because I gave you my player.
Right? As is, I would give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
At best.
Okay.
I pressed to go lower.
Tough but fair.
But I think they'll improve it.
Yeah.
But as is, 7 out of 10. One of my players filled up on hope very quickly, by partway through the game. And I was very purposefully trying not to leave or expound upon rules that weren't brought up in the quick start.
Yeah.
Because the only way to really gauge how well the quick start is teaching how to play the game is to let the quick start, because I, as a new GM, air quotes, picking this up and running it, wouldn't have known there were other abilities.
Yeah.
Your character Marlowe had hope-based abilities, but the Ribbit
True.
did not. And it doesn't mention things like your tag team moves, and it doesn't mention things like helping your friend, give them advantage and things like that, and using hope for things like that as well. So she could have kept that stream of hope actually rolling, but didn't, because they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I told her after the game, she's like, "Oh, that would have actually made me enjoy the system more."
Oh,
because
so you guys actually did discuss the use of hope more. Okay.
She was confused by a certain, bits of the game, and that was one of them. And once I explained that fully and really, really dialed in the, how combat works and stuff, then she really started to understand it. But even with that, she enjoyed the game. And, she said it was her favorite game of the night, which we'll get to next week. And though your daughter was the opposite, which for reasons I'm sure you'll get into in a minute. And she said she would play it again. She's looking forward to, playing more, which is good. I like that, especially considering at this point the game is just going to, branch out from here and expound upon more utility and stuff. And that's actually one of my biggest critiques, is while they do like heavily go over how the character sheet, first page of your character sheet works, everybody goes through and you read one after the other, like what the next little, piece of the character sheet is. By the end of that, if everyone's really paying attention, you should know what every single bit of your character sheet means. But your second page is where they have your domain cards and stuff like that. And that is not explained at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was, and that kind of goes into the whole thing with not knowing what to do with your hope. Because if you had a lot of stuff on your domain, like I did, right? I had a lot of abilities that were fueled by hope. And I think out of everybody at the table, I think I had the easiest time balancing stress, hope in all the situations, because I have better grasp on the situation. Because we've been talking about it for so long.
And that's, I was saying, is that just because of your information going into it?
So I think it's partly of both. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's one, my knowledge going in, and then two, that a lot of my abilities were very hope focused. I think and there actually, that is to say that there wasn't confusion on my end, because we ran into an issue that I wasn't sure if I could do, which was my main primary origin subclass for sorcerer, which we've talked about what it does, and it allows you to burn stress to do additional things. And it's never anywhere like explicitly stated how many times you can do that
on one
go. Can you just keep using actions to do that, right? Or is it just once and then
pick one of the options,
and then you basically can't do it again this round, right? Which we never really got a real answer on that. We started playing it very specifically.
I was gonna say that I rolled it as one per action.
Yes,
instead of like dumping actions into one attack or one ability. You could do it more than once in a round, players, GM, player, GM, but only one of those per
one of
action.
the things. Yes, because there's some pretty like specific things that you can do on here, like adding an additional target within range.
Yeah.
So being able to like do that would make certain spells that I have, like Chaos Bolt, incredibly powerful. Like it's a very powerful, or Unleash Chaos is an incredibly powerful spell that targets one thing. And then you mark a stress to make an additional target. Now, if I could just say I want to burn 4 stress and hit everybody
with one action,
with 2d10, it starts to get a little bit crazy. So yeah, that I think could have been expanded on a little bit better in the quick start sheet that you have in front of you. Like being able to look at that and it very clearly stating like you can do this many times, or this costs this much.
And I'm surprised, at least, from the script I have on my GM side, how like it goes through showing you guys your character sheet, and it goes through, running through how like combat works and things like that. I really was surprised that at no point is it like, especially when they, they're presuming that you're running these pre-gens, that it's never like, hey, now let's run through their domain cards.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I wish they kind of had. So there's something really cool that that's in this if you haven't looked at the quick start yet, but basically you get your character sheet, and then there's a secondary sheet that goes behind it. and
Yes,
it
this is rad.
has two columns, a left and a right. So basically, as you're reading over the rules of the game master, you tell them to put that sheet underneath it and then slide it out to the left or slide it out to the right.
Right.
So what it does is it's basically stacking two sheets of paper on top of each other so that you can read, and it's got little arrows that point to every single section on your character sheet that very explicitly states what's going on that character sheet, what you should be looking for, and the different things that you can do there. Now, that would have been very cool to have something similar on the actual domain card sheet that also includes your community, ancestry, and subclass. So I think that if they were going to add something, I would like to see that little basically rule slide out that says like, hey, this is your community, this is your ancestry, this is your subclass, and then giving you more information about what you're actually doing in there. Like, this is what your spells are. This is, there is stuff on there. So don't get me wrong. There's information on that sheet. I think
it's got little snippets of text that shows kind of tells you what does what.
It tells you like what the cost is, but it's not the same extent. It's more like saying like, oh, this part right here is the vulnerable condition, and this is what the vulnerable condition does, and this part right here is what kind of spell it is. This is the recall cost, which is interesting that they would put that in because it's something you're not even going to hit until level 5.
Yeah.
So that's a weird rule to include in a level 1 quick start, but it's there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would have rather had more useful information beyond that sheet than something like that, because that to me was taking up space that didn't need to be taken up in a level 1 adventure. Unless you're just wanting to look at your card and like, I don't know what this means. They haven't told me what this means. I think that's maybe the reason why they put that there. So there's not like an unknown part of the card.
I have no issue with too much information.
Yeah.
It's more of why leave out things that are useful,
leave out more useful information
versus have the stuff you won't use. Like if you had to pick, if you only had so much ink to print these things,
Well, that's what I was going to say. That slide out thing would have been beneficial for this page too, just so you can have it right there, and you could put like ancestry and community and subclass on one side, slide it over domain cards on the other side, where you get to talk about like domain cards and what constitutes an action and all this fun stuff. So I think that really cool setup for explaining the character sheets would have benefited for the cards as well.
Mm-hmm. So after that, do you have any more from like the player side as far as like learning the game from the beginning?
No.
Tempe.
Oh, what about her?
What was her like real opinion? I said that I was going to throw to you in a minute.
Yeah. So she said she had a lot of fun with it. She did like it. But I think that her source of confusion wasn't from, I think it was kind of the only place where she really kind of got lost in the sauce was in the final battle.
Is this about her weapon?
Are we doing any spoilers in here?
Hey, if you're a player and you're going to be playing this,
look away.
Tiny spoiler, look away.
Close your ears.
But I mean,
we're going to cover game mechanics.
I was going to say we'll probably talk about this kind of like the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you're a GM, hi, welcome in. The water is lukewarm. It's been it's been hot for a while. But we're gas is expensive.
Okay. So she had there were two systems we played that evening. We played a 2d12 system and a 2d20 system.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Yeah, we played those two different systems. Out of the two, she preferred the 2d20 system over the 2d12 system. I think the only reason why there's a distinction there is because one, there's less math in the 2d20 system.
2d20 system, we'll get to that next week for sure. But
yes, we're going to talk about that.
It's super easy to grasp.
Yeah, and it's very easy to grasp. There's no math involved. There's no hope versus fear or anything like that. So it's a little bit less complicated of a system. So she said she preferred that system over the 2d12 system. She didn't say she didn't like the 2d12 system at all. The thing where she kind of got lost is in the combat situation that we had, because she did not pick up the context clues of the countdown version of that combat, which was that there were certain enemies that were essentially untouchable, but not untouchable, but
no, just beefcakes.
Yes. And she did not pick up on that at all.
I noticed.
She thought those were the things that we had to kill straight up, which is hilarious because like everybody else picked up on it.
Right.
And like to the point where like there was one thing that you said that was terrifying that she didn't even pick up on, that we went back on, which was you thought she was telling you damage, and
Mhm.
she was just telling you her roll, which was like a 27 or something.
Right.
And you're all like, oh, 27 damage? It didn't really do that much. He's still completely
You were
fine.
a little
And then I'm like, and she's like, oh no, that was my
yeah.
roll. The damage is only 6. And you're all like, yeah, same still applies. And I'm like, did you not hear that first part? This thing's impossible to kill. It's not gonna happen. But
It's not impossible for sure. It was absolutely not impossible. But it's extremely difficult
Yeah,
at
very
level
difficult,
1
yeah.
to solo one of these things.
Yeah.
If all 3 of you were to just gang up on one, you probably could, but then you're risking all those skeletons and the other wraith going after the person you're protecting.
yeah, I think
And-
that because
yeah.
well, you did it very by the book.
Yes.
So you explained it straight off the page.
Mm-hmm.
You did not expand upon it, right? Which I think was purposeful,
Right.
right? So you didn't tell us how to do the objective.
But I did after.
Kind of. Yes.
I mentioned exactly how the die works afterwards, which the game did not tell me to do.
Which the game did not tell you to. Well,
Right.
It didn't work. She
I
still
know.
wasn't picking up on that. But yeah, so that I think was the only place that was like kind of confusing and kind of frustrated her very slightly.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not the fault of this guide or you as a game master, and more of her for not being able to grasp that
No,
or read the context.
it's all of
clues.
it, and it's one of those things that like I tried very difficult not to leave the boundaries of the the guide, and it was one of those things where like, it didn't it told me how the die mechanic works, the countdown, and I told you guys a countdown die was going into play, and then I was like, all right, but I'm not gonna tell you more, and then I was thinking about it more. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna tell you,
Yeah.
and I was like, it's a D8, and every single time you guys kill somebody, it's gonna drop down a number. When we hit 0, combat's over, and then I put it down, and I was like, there we go. That will explain this enough, because I flat out said, kill 8 things.
Yeah.
And we hit 0. And then when one of them hit the target you're protecting, I said, and that brings it up to a 7 again. And I was like, okay, cool. I fully explained how this countdown mechanic works. We're good to go. And then like 15 rounds later,
Yeah.
we were still
So the first
working
round
through
of
it.
combat, I was not 100% sure that we couldn't target and kill those things.
Mhm.
I knew we could target them,
which is fair.
and we could kill
Which
them.
you hadn't encountered them.
I hadn't encountered them yet.
They
Yeah.
hadn't attacked you. You didn't see what you were working against.
Yeah.
And then very quickly,
So I had made the assumption that like, okay, there's 6 things on the table.
Right.
We have to kill 8 things to end combat.
right,
So I was like, okay, these 6 things have to die,
and then more will come.
and then something else is going to come.
That's a great gamer
So
brain.
my very first thing to do was going to be to hit one of the big guys. But then I
Right.
think somebody else went before me and ended up killing one of the little guys, and then another little guy came up. And that's when it clicked for me. I was all like, oh, the little guys are refreshing.
Little guys.
So it's the little
Yeah.
guys that need to die. So that's what I started focusing on until I eventually got deaded myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that, like I said, I don't think that it was really at fault for the game so much. But overall, she did not like the game. She did enjoy it. She liked it a lot.
Okay.
But out of the 2 systems that we did play, she strongly preferred the second system for reasons that we'll get into when we talk about the second system.
Yep. Next week, I enjoyed it too, and we will get to our thoughts on that and what it was next week.
Yeah.
So I think, based on that the next time we play, not only does she already have a better understanding,
Oh, yes.
but if we're leaving the realm of literal rails the game, like down to what I say, that it'll she'll probably grasp it better and have better time.
And I just remembered there was a situation that we encountered that was a holdover from Dungeons and Dragons,
Are you talking about the range?
a presumption,
Yes.
which is ranged attack.
This is actually what I
So
thought you mentioned earlier.
This was a big one, yeah, which I had made a mental note to bring up and then completely forgot about it.
Didn't do it.
Which was she was not making bow attacks at close range because she was running off of Dungeons and Dragons mentality,
Right.
which was that you're not using your bow in
But
like,
she
hand-to-hand
also
combat.
assumed that all of the creatures would get opportunity attacks.
Yes.
So she was using non-lethal or melee attacks like claw, which gives vulnerability and stuff like that if you hit, and then felt like her turn was wasted because would do it, wouldn't hit, didn't do any damage, didn't apply the effect,
Yeah.
and then was just getting frustrated. And I was like, well, why don't you back up and use your bow, or just use your bow here? And he's like, well, they'll get an attack, or like I can't use it. I'm in melee range.
Yes.
And I'm like,
it was those two
what's the
things.
range on your bow? And she's like, oh, it's far. And I'm like, that means you can use it up to far distance. She's like, right, but I'm not far. And I'm like, right, but the distance between far and you is where you are.
Yeah.
So you can do it. She's like, what is that? What do I do? Like stab him like Legolas with an arrow? Like, exactly.
Well, yeah, and there's, I mean, like, that's the first thing I thought it was Legolas, because you've seen Lord of the Rings movies. He shoots people point blank
All the time.
like just literally jumps up in the air and shoots them.
Which I think is part of the fantasy for this.
Exactly, yeah. Which, and to be honest, I didn't even really consider. Like, I was thinking about it very linear too. Like, I'm watching her kind of decide what to do on her turn, and in my brain too, I also was thinking, well, if I move away, attack of opportunity. It's just, you're so ingrained in these things
because
like,
it's an ability in this.
I
whether
know
you can
this.
do that.
That's what I'm saying. I know this because
Yeah.
we've talked about this game so much. But then when you're in the heat of the moment and you're in the combat, you revert to old habits.
Right.
And those old habits are rules that don't exist in the narrative structure that you're playing in.
Yeah.
So I think that probably, knowing that now would make things a lot smoother and more enjoyable for her. And we also noticed it with Corey too on some of the occasions, which was the balance of action tokens, right?
Yep.
And that was very important in this game because you eventually did kill me, and the reason why you killed me is because of the action economy, because you were getting fed so many action tokens to try and do specific types of effects that were probably not the most efficient way. Yeah, they were unnecessary things. Unnecessary actions that were just feeding you and giving you more to throw back at us. And again, that comes from, I think, not fully understanding start to finish the action tracker
100%,
and what the action economy actually looks like in practice.
Because if this was 5th edition, which is what both of them are primarily used to, they would know that they had a move, they had an action and a bonus action. In this, you say, hey, you can go again until you miss or roll a fear, and I, make it my turn, whatever. It's your turn. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna use this ability to go over here. I'm like, all right, cool. Just put an action thing. You did that. Use your action. All right, cool. Now that I'm there, I'm gonna attack. And I'm like, oh, well, you could have just walked over there.
Yeah.
And then like, oh, but I wanted to. Okay. Well, I guess if you're gonna do this, that's another action token. Like, okay. And then I think there was one time I walked her back on it. And I was like, yeah, you just want to say you moved over?
Yes.
And we'll make it cool and stuff, but that way it's only the one action. She's like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of starting to grasp it more too. But yeah, like you said, you guys would attack like one skeleton and I would have 3 or 4 action tokens. And I'm like, this isn't right. Like the balance here is a little off.
I think there was one specific instance where she was all like, okay, I'm here. I want to use my ability to get up in this tree. And then I want to use another ability to come down out of the tree. And then I want to attack that guy.
Yeah.
And you're all like, so that's going to cost you 3 actions this turn to do all of those things when you could just walk over and do it.
Yeah.
And just attack. And that's only 1 action. So you're only feeding me once instead of feeding me 3 times. Thematically, what you're doing is very cool.
It's rad.
It's rad.
What I ended up having her do was, I was like, look, we'll just say you got up in the tree. We're not going to make you use your tongue or anything. We're just going to say you got up in the tree as part of your movement. And your dagger's melee range, but you using your tongue, and that's you can reach them with that. We'll call this one action. Just roll with your tongue.
Yeah.
And that's how we did that. But throughout the game, moments like that kept arising, and I wasn't always, you're tracking things, always completely cognizant and paying attention of every action she used.
Yes.
Yeah. So there were
I was just putting tokens on every time anybody would do something. I was like, because at one point I didn't want you to have to keep coming over the screen. So I was just like, I'm just going to keep stacking them up, and then I'll take them off and we'll just make it my little token pile over here and I'll keep track of it. And then I'm just like watching all these tokens go on. And I'm like, oh God, he's going to take a turn and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt real bad.
Yeah. But everyone's learning together.
That's why I think that like, it was a very good learning experience, and it was even for me. It gave me like a really good chance to really try and balance my stress and hope piles. Yeah, which I thought I did a pretty.
You did really well. I'm sad you went down,
bouncing back and forth.
You took out a lot of folks.
Yeah, well, I had a really bad fail streak there at the end where I
Yeah.
wasn't doing like any kind of like I was rolling horribly and nothing was actually going off. So I ended up going down. But I mean, for what it was, I did enjoy playing a sorcerer. I didn't think I was going to be the sorcerer.
I was surprised you enjoyed it. Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to be. I was looking at all the characters because at the end of the day, Tyler and me are very similar. As in, if anything gets randomized, we'll take that, right?
Right.
Because I'll play any character that you throw at me. Like
Yeah.
if you want to tell me what to play, I will play it. It doesn't really matter what it is. Whereas some people would rather make a choice and they don't want to get stuck playing something that they don't want to play. I'll play anything.
Our friend in New York only plays casters.
Yeah, I just don't care. I'll play literally anything. So we left it up to them to choose their characters, and then whoever was left was left. Marlowe was the required character for the campaign.
Yep.
So the other two made their choices that were not Marlowe. So I defaulted to being
I'm still surprised
Marlowe.
Tempe didn't go Marlowe.
And I thought she was. Yeah, I figured that she was going to go Marlowe, and I thought Corey would choose the rogue.
So did I.
And then
Yep.
I was probably
Barnacle.
going to choose the warrior. I was going to be a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my whole thing. But then all that happened, and I was like, well, I guess I'm Marlowe. Sorcerer wouldn't be my first pick, but I'm glad I played it because it is a very cool class.
You got to balance out the stress and the hope and stuff.
And I
which
got
think
to,
was
I
great.
got to play with hope a lot, actually,
Yeah.
and I got to play with stress. So the sorcerer was different than I expected too, because like it's interesting because you look at something like you look at the domain cards and you immediately assign them to a class. And one of my main domain cards, because sorcerer shares
your
with
typical
rogue,
Yep.
and it's a typical rogue skill.
Mm-hmm.
But as I played it and I flavored it to be a sorcerer skill, I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Because it was just like really cool, like, to be able to use it. And it's not just a rogue skill. It can be both.
I mean, it definitely is in this, game, in this, this whole context and everything.
Yeah. I think I look at the bleed over a little bit differently now. Like as far as like, what is this skill? What is it?
And to be fair, I don't blame you because I do the same thing. They put art on these cards, on these domain cards.
Yeah.
That heavily imply who it's for.
Yes.
Right. And you can choose from those. There's a little bleed over for every class has somebody. And it's if your sorcerer skill, like domain, is just ready to go. You don't have to do any crazy flavoring or anything. And then you take this and you had to tweak it a bit, at least the imagery. But other than that,
I didn't even realize that I had changed the imagery to be exactly opposite of what the card is, because it's a rogue skill called Rain of Blades, and the artwork is basically a rogue like throwing blades out, like etheric blades, which is what you would think you're throwing daggers out. And when I actually themed it, I was basically like actually bringing like etheric blades down from like the tree canopies and stuff like that, which I didn't even mean to do, but I did, which worked.
It did. Yep.
Yeah. But I guess back to the original question. Yes, she had fun.
Okay.
She did enjoy it. And she does want to play more.
Surprising.
Yes, I think that she is more hyped to play an original character.
Oh, I'm
she
sure.
was to play an assigned character.
Being able to actually choose your domain cards alone, especially now that we'll be starting off at level 2. So that's even more choice going into it, which I think will be fun. But at least you guys already have and it's another reason I was like, let's just do the quick start, is because now everybody not only has an idea of what they want to do, but they have an idea of how everything actually works.
Yes.
So when you're choosing your level 1 domain card and stuff, you have less of a chance of having that like remorse of like, I shouldn't have got this, should have got something else, because you have a better grasp on how everything actually works.
Yeah, the interactions of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think helps out a lot. Yeah. Other than that, everything seemed to play really well.
I think the first encounter went great. Overall, like the role play there was pretty good. The decisions overall from everybody and combat, and I think it went very well.
Yeah.
Getting into town was fun.
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing that struck me, and maybe this is because of specifically how I was getting hit, was the only thing, and maybe it's also because I was playing a sorcerer, but the main thing that happened to me that I didn't expect was every time I got hit, I was burning armor points. Like I found myself feeling that I had to
Because your evasion was low enough.
Because my evasion is so low and I was getting hit literally almost every time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was getting hit, they were big chunky hits that were like 3 damage and 2 damage. And like looking at my hit
Low
point pool,
thresholds, low armor.
the low thresholds and the low
Evasion.
armor, I found myself like really burning through armor slots very quickly. Like I was just going through them at like such a rapid pace, which I didn't expect. I thought that I would have a little bit more of a balance of using armor, and maybe I would in different classes, right? Which, you know, maybe it would be different if I had a higher evasion or just a higher armor in general, where it would only take 1 to mitigate that.
Yeah.
But as playing as a sorcerer, my armor was a base of 4 and my evasion was a 9. So I was taking a lot of hits, and I was, you know, I probably was playing more aggressively than I should be.
No,
well, my main weapon, main weapon is a ranged weapon.
Right.
And I found myself really leaning into this whole like trying to hit everybody at once, which meant that I had to be close.
That's true.
So I was like running up into these large groups of enemies just so
that
I could
then
rain
reach
blades,
you and attack,
and then they could all reach me and attack. Yeah. So me going down was 100% my fault, because I'm the one that put myself in those positions. I'm the one that ran up just so that I could try, because I was getting greedy, and I was all like, I'm going to try and hit everybody kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But I think that's the one thing that kind of caught me off guard, I think, was the amount at which I was burning through my armor points. But also, man, elves, do not underestimate extra downtime moves.
Oh, it's so good. We knew it was going to be good. Yeah, that extra downtime, every downtime is awesome.
Do not underestimate that one extra downtime. That can make a difference right there.
Yeah.
Like huge difference. That rest that we took and that extra downtime allowed me to really clean up the party. Like as far as like healing wounds that were on there, relieving stress off of myself so that I can keep running my machine, and then also getting back that armor that I was just dumping. So yeah, that extra downtime move, that's good.
Other than that, I do like all the little bits they give you for NPCs. They give you little blurbs about, you know, what their name is, and, you know, just bits of their personality. And that's easy to read over really quickly and kind of come with the character on the spot. Or, you know, if you plan ahead a little bit better, like, you know, get your voices and everything ready to go. So on the GM side, that's great. It does run you through how short rests work. And I think at some point, you guys were like, oh, we should probably take a short rest, which is you knowing short rest is a thing.
Yes.
And I was like, well, you know, actually, if we look ahead a bit, you're not going to have another combat between now and your actual short rest where the game's going to tell you how to short rest. So hold off for like 5.
Yeah. It's like, had I not known that, it probably would have been fine. We could have kept going. But like, I looked at us as a party and I was like, I'm not feeling too great.
Totally. And I think
we should short rest.
I think most actual groups would have 100% in the situation you guys were in would have short rested there.
Yeah. But I like the way that they baked it in so you can kind of learn all the mechanics. I think I like that a lot about this quick start guide, was it's very well set up to learn these different things at very specific intervals that work out really well.
Yeah.
Like that first combat's enough to hurt you, but not really enough to wipe you.
Right.
Right. So it's like, it's just enough to get it to where you're going to need to take a short rest, which is great. I like that a lot. And I think one thing I really liked about this, stupidly enough, was the story was very compelling, and it was very cool with neat little twists. Like, I like the idea that you're delivering a mystical package. You don't know what's in it.
Right.
And then I like that you find a town that has a protection bubble around it, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And it's very thematic and very cool.
Put up by the same person that you're looking for.
And then the big M. Night Shyamalan twist at the end is that you have the keystone that carries the same, essentially, kind of protection, but like an amped up version of what she's done to the city of Hush.
Yeah.
And it's a very cool idea, and it's a really cool theme and story. Like, I really liked the entire story. Was very cool. I enjoyed that a lot.
I enjoyed
Neat
that
bit of writing.
The bit of that her home is like tied up in like a tree, like held up by a rope, and it like lowers itself and unfolds like a flower. And her being a fairy, there's a bunch of like whimsy and stuff there that I really enjoyed between her character personality and like how she handled abilities. And there's that bit that they don't really ever get to, where like after she helps you, it's that she looks like she's aged since casting this spell.
Yeah.
And like all these little things, you're like, oh, is her every time she uses this magic, it's aging her. What's gonna happen there? And then she's like, oh, when you rest up, come back and see me. I felt something when we were out on the in the forest. I need you to go check it out. And it's like dropping little hints of little story tidbits and stuff that you could totally run with after running this. And I like that a lot. That it's not just a tutorial. It's also like, it feels like the tutorial of a video game.
Yeah.
Like it's just getting you ready. Like at the end of this, the Daggerheart like splash screen would come up, and then you would like start off back in Hush, and you would go like, let's get some equipment with our new gold or whatever, a couple handfuls of gold, and then you like check back in with her when you're ready. And I don't know, it was very well put together in that sense.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
There's just more information I would add, for, like I said, the domains and exactly how like weapon ranges and work, but how much and how hope can be used. But it's already 36 pages of like text, 39 once you add in like the pictures and stuff too. So how much bigger do they want it to be? I think they should at least explain domain cards and stuff a little better, and probably how to use hope. But do they not want you using those hope abilities?
I don't know. I think that they should, because I think that not every character in this was set up to burn hope in that very specific way. And if you weren't, then you were just stockpiling it, not really knowing what to do.
So then even if because they did this to the GM, and I'll get to this in a second, maybe just tell you, hey, if you've got a hope, you can use it to help an ally.
Yeah.
And just kind of
that's what I think. I think that hope, like should have been like a little blurb that just says other things you can do with hope.
Yeah.
Right. And this could actually be like a whole new page to this quick start guide, which would just be you have your character sheet in front of you, right? And then another sheet in front of you. And that other sheet would just have some small blurbs on there, which are like, one of them could be like, these are suggested actions you can take during your turn.
Ooh, yeah.
These are things that you can spend your hope on. Another big one is these are what your experiences are used for and how to use them. Examples on how to use your experiences, because they came up seldomly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think it was really quite like it was talked about, but it was talked about and glossed over. More
of when we were going over the character sheets than anything else.
Exactly. And then it's quickly forgotten, I think, because as a game mechanic, which I think is a sorely missed point, because I think experiences are an awesome game mechanic. It's a really good game mechanic, and it's also central to certain subclass or ancestries, like Clank's, for instance.
And I think it's easy to gloss over too, because pre-gen too.
Yes, exactly.
When you guys are making your own characters and coming with your own experiences and why they're your experiences,
you're thinking about those
remember
experiences.
More
but when you're assigned to experiences, it's easy to forget those. And I think that could be mitigated by just, like I said, having that little blurb that says like, oh, these are what experiences can do for you, and these are some examples of how you can use experiences. And then, like I said, if those kind of like little blurbs were there, I think it would make it a little bit even better, because it would almost be like, this is my quick reference sheet of what I can do in this game. So that way it will destroy any kind of like not confusion, but like quiet time where everybody's all like, I don't really know what I can do right now. Or like, I don't know what I should be doing right now.
Yeah.
And I think something like that would go a really long way here. And it would be really easy to include in this. Like if I was going to run this, if it was like a product that was produced and I was buying it to teach people how to play this game, that would be something that I would create to go along with this.
Right.
A quick start, like a little action guide or a flow chart even, which a lot of people make flow charts for Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, of course.
Just to kind of know what you can actually do with your class. And people make flow charts that even go into detail about like your spells that you have and what you should spell in what order or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think a small flow chart would definitely benefit this game. I'm
sure people will make them too.
I'm sure somebody's already made a flow chart for this. I just think that...
How many times have they had to adjust it in the last couple months?
Should make one.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, maybe they will. We'll see. There's some good cookies over there, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
On the GM side of things, Death Move. As explained in the Quick Start, you experience this firsthand. If a PC ever marks their last hit point, they make a Death Move. For the purposes of the quick start adventure, they simply fall unconscious until they are healed for any amount or danger passes.
Yeah.
That's all you get, though.
Yeah, that's all
So
you get.
what do you do when you TPK? Which we could have.
As a GM, I think you're supposed to reference the actual playtest manual in which they talk about how
Maybe.
read the room, and if
But
it
that's
doesn't make sense to TPK,
but that's a
don't
newer
TPK.
thing. This quick start's been around since the beginning.
I'm just saying, I think that they assume as a game master you're going to not let that happen. I was ready to make a death move and go out in a blaze of glory,
but like
to
I said,
protect my city.
Reviewing this, ignoring everything else, only looking at the quick start as its own thing,
as its own standalone thing. Yeah.
You were ready to go out and blaze of glory, the main character of this thing.
At that point I had figured out what this was, because
Yeah.
like when she revealed what this keystone was, and I was at that moment, like as a character, like, oh my god, my city
This is important.
is like exposed right now, and this is like massively important to get done. And at that moment, if I would have had the chance to die but at a success,
Would have done it.
I would have done it.
Funny.
Yeah, I would have made myself go out with a bang, literally,
you're just
to take some
unconscious.
stuff down. Yeah, I totally would have, just because of story reasons. But yeah, you're not allowed to, which I get it, because these are all characters that aren't supposed to die, like, and that would be like the final it for Marlowe, and she's supposed to live. You can't go on playing Marlowe in the second one if she's dead.
One big thing, and I had a feeling this would happen based on some of the stat blocks for adversaries I've seen just as we've gone over it, but really using them in practice. They have got to really nail down adversaries. I know they've been working on the stuff behind the scenes and haven't been really updating everything, because there's too many change logs and updates. Like, they can't keep updating all these adversaries every game. But sometimes, all right, let's look at an enemy like the ancient skeleton you guys fought. They don't have a major threshold. It's minor or major. So at most you can do 2 hit points, which is fine because they only have 2 hit points.
Oh, you mean severe?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Minor, major, severe, and which is fine because they only have 2. But there are some enemies that only have minors that have more than 1 hit point.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So that gets funky.
Well, do you think that's purposefully because they don't want you to one-shot that enemy?
Possibly, but that's silly. It doesn't matter if you're incredibly strong or a level 1 character, as long as you hit their evasion.
Okay.
You're doing the same amount of damage. Sometimes it's hard to tell what you're actually, like, sometimes your best, the ability that your character would do, because it's like the strong ability, is an insane amount of damage, right? So let's go an example here, right? So the Wraith has a life drain it can use from far. It is a 1d10 plus 4, which at level 1 is pretty nuts. Plus 3, to hit and everything. Or if you're within close range, which the battlefield was majority close range anyway, you could use Memory Delve, also an action. Make an attack roll against the close targets, still plus 3. And if you hit, they tell you a terrifying moment, and then it's 1d20 plus 2. And it makes them temporarily vulnerable until their next rest.
Yeah.
Rest. Which means all of your follow-up attacks are going to be more likely to hit. Why would that character not do that every single time? Yeah. Why is that not a recharge? Or like,
I think that they're leaning very heavily into you as a game master juggling that on your own.
Totally. Like, just for story reasons and stuff. But that's funky and not spelled out anywhere. They just want you to control a monster where they're like, hey, you can do this unlimited times and it's your better move.
Yeah, it's your better move. Why do anything else?
Why would you do anything else?
Yeah.
Your back's against the wall.
It's probably an oversight on their hand.
I hope that gets figured out a bit. It's like dragons and stuff in 5th edition. You having to roll a d6 to get their breath weapon back, and you get it back, and you're like, oh, here comes the damage. That ability feels like it should be a recharge.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those
thematic. It's high damage.
Yeah, and it's thematic when you're in the game too. Like whenever we're playing a game, and we get Garrett playing for us, and he's all like, "All right, I'm gonna roll to see if this ability recharges," and everybody's all like, just waiting to like, "Oh, he didn't. Okay, thank God." Or "Oh, I got it," and then you're like, "Okay, is it gonna be this turn?" Or is he going to do it next turn? I got to make sure I got to stay away now because that ability is now back on the table.
Yeah.
I've seen it once and it's going to hit me again. So thematically too, it's also, a very cool thing to have something on a recharge. And then also, it, makes it easier for you to not just choose the powerful ability every single turn.
Yep. So I want to see some balance in the adversaries. I want to see that a little bit better, or at least very clear to the GM, like, hey, we highly recommend using your primary attack as much as possible. But we understand when, you've got some pain you need to dish out or whatever to keep,
you gotta make an example out of somebody.
Exactly. And
I want to hear what their memory is, just out of curiosity.
But I could have just walked around using that on everybody every turn.
Every single turn. You just hit us all once and then you're good.
Yeah. It nuts. So, yeah. I don't know how much more I have to say. 7 out of 10. I want to see some improvements.
I went into it thinking that I was going to rate it very low.
Yeah.
And was pleasantly surprised by the entire experience.
That's good.
I liked it.
We'll have to review our next game and see how it compares to On Rails, because maybe this is, the better version.
Yeah.
Because, as far as painting a word picture, you get plenty of details that you can't escape from.
That's true.
Versus a GM planning things on their own or making things up on, on the spot, where this is so much of it is just read to you.
And that's why I think I rated it so high, because when I look at it and I rated it, I was rating it as in kind of the way that you told me when I said that sounds horrible. The way that you framed it was, well, I think that they're looking at this as in a group of friends are at a comic book store or an FLGS. They buy this off the shelf. They walk over, sit down at a table, open it up, and they can all play.
Oh, totally. You don't need to do any prep going into this.
And that's where I look at it, and that's why I give it the score that I give it. Because it accomplishes that well enough.
Oh, for sure.
For an 8 for me.
You could get through this entire thing without knowing anything else that other than what it tells you.
And like I said, the only reason why I ding it is because there is not enough information. I think there should be a little bit more. And I think if you fix that, you add your quick reference or whatever, and you go into a little bit more detail on some of these things.
Yeah.
Then you have a very solid product, air quotes here, that works really well.
I agree. But for now, I've been Tyler.
And I've been Richard.
And we've been True Strike. Bye, everybody.
Marlo out.
Hey, adventurers. Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on X, Threads, or Instagram. New episodes released every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.